What are some of the differences or maybe things added on in that new role of being the bench coach?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I asked myself that question too. I have, I've got some other buddies that are bench coaches throughout Major League Baseball, and I've had plenty of conversations with them, and every one of them is unique. It kind of depends on the manager, and I'm very thankful to be under Buck. I'm very calm, like knowing he's there, he's got it. He dots the I's, crosses the T's, and he's very prepared, and that's given me a sense of I don't have to overwork. I don't have to do something that I'm not used to. And like I said, this whole thing will kind of happen organically. And I'm very thankful to be underneath Buck.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Mets Pod. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And we have a special guest for you because it is Mets bench coach now, Eric Chavez. Eric, I know spring training is just one day after the other, so we really appreciate your time today. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, it's been a good spring training. We've got a lot of look at some of our young guys, and been under Buck's wing for the last couple of weeks, so it's been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I feel like it's a unique atmosphere down there, especially with the WBC going on. It's nice to see the younger players get that extended look. But I wanted to start by asking you, we know you've had a couple front office stints under Billy Epler, with the Yankees, with the Angels, of course. But coaching, when you were playing, was there a moment where you go, okay, I don't really ever want to be away from the game. I want to be on the field in the dugout in some capacity for coaching? Or was it something that at the end of your career, it just naturally came together for you?
Yeah, I definitely think it was more towards the end. It was actually my last 2 years. I was playing with the Diamondbacks. I was home. My kids were there. And it was kind of a weird thing where I've got more enjoyment when I knew I wasn't playing, when I could mentor some of the younger guys. And I looked forward to not being in the lineup. And I at that point, I kind of knew, okay, the end of my career is probably coming. It's not that I didn't enjoy playing, just physically with all the injuries, it was becoming a lot. And so, I just look forward to going to the yard and helping out some of the young Diamondback guys. And I kind of knew at that point, at some point, I'd get back on the field.
When you talk about working with the young guys, the talk of the town, and certainly this podcast, has been Brett Baty. Everyone knows about his bat and everything that he brings to the table on the offensive side of the ball. The focus really over the last few weeks has been on his defensive improvements that he needs to make. From your vantage point, as someone obviously with multiple gold gloves and a lot of experience at the third base position, what do you think he needs to do to be considered big league ready defensively at third base?
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked this question a lot the last couple of weeks, and
I figured.
Yeah, honestly, really, he just needs to convince himself that he could play third base at the big league level and do it extremely well. He's put in a lot of work. He's just come in with the right attitude this year, and physically, he's done the things. His footwork's gotten better. The game is starting to slow down. I know the first couple games were a little rough for him, and I think that was him just really wanting to prove to everybody else that he could play third base. And really, it was just something he had to prove himself. The last 3 or 4 games, he's slowed it down. The game's really it's gotten a lot calm for him, and he's seeing every hop. His feet are moving. The throws are good. He's made a couple really good plays the last couple days, and it's just a matter of time. And I told him, I said, listen, I was pretty good at third base, but when I first started, it wasn't very pretty. And I just put in a lot of hard work, and it took time, and had to prove everybody wrong. And I don't think he needs to prove people wrong. He just needs to prove to himself that he can be a very good third baseman.
So, Eric, what's the benefit of having a veteran on the roster in Eduardo Escobar, a guy that has done it for a long time? He's played all over the place, but we know the comfort level at third base, and just the fact that, what are the benefits of being able to play him? Is it something that he's played next to Lindor before? Those guys can feed off each other well. Is it just the comfort of being under the bright lights, having that benefit of the veteran on the roster?
Yeah, it's really changed. I mean, the game has gone a lot younger, for good reasons. These guys are coming up at an early age, ready to perform. But kind of the older, guys like myself, that towards the end of my career, when I came through, there was 5 or 6 veterans on the team. The extra guys were veterans, and they would sit on the bench with you and tell you how to act, what to do. how to prepare yourself for a game when you're not playing. And now a lot of the extra guys are younger guys, so they don't really know how to, everybody's used to being the best player on their team. They play every game. And now some of these younger guys and they're not playing every day. And it's like, hold on, they don't really know how to adapt to it. And on those off days, what exactly is my work ethic on those off days? And so having a guy like Eduardo is fantastic. I feel like we have an older team. A lot of our guys have played a while. I mean, Lindor is a young guy, but he's got a lot of experience. Pete's the same way. Nemo, Marte, we've got a really, really good clubhouse. And honestly, like it's one of the things I think last year, you don't buy a winning team. It's hard to do in baseball. I think in the past it's kind of been done, and teams haven't been that successful at it. But the one thing last year was the way that these guys gelled and the professionalism that they brought. And it's everybody could say it's easy. Oh, yeah, you spend a lot of money, you get a bunch of good players, and you win ball games. And a lot of the times that's not the case. And we're pretty lucky with the individuals we have here.
So everybody knows you were the hitting coach last year. You moved to a new role in the bench coach this year. And I think a lot of baseball fans might not know what new responsibilities that kind of title entails. And I think for you, it's probably an amazing transition where you've worked hand in hand with these guys just last year. But what are some of the differences or maybe things added on in that new role of being the bench coach?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I asked myself that question too. I have, I've got some other buddies that are bench coaches throughout Major League Baseball, and I've had plenty of conversations with them, and every one of them is unique. It kind of depends on the manager, and Buck and I have had a few conversations, but we kind of wanted it to happen organically. It wasn't like we looked at each other and was like, "Here's your checklist, and this is what you got to do daily." We have a longer spring training this year. Unfortunately, we have a couple guys that are gone to the WBC, and we hope to get them back soon. But these things kind of just naturally happen, and I'm getting the flow of the way Buck works and how his mind works, which is it's a lot faster than the way my mind works. So I'm being challenged in a lot of ways that I haven't been used to, and I haven't had to look at the game in this way. So I'm very thankful for it. My brain is definitely overworked, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be a lot better for it. And once the season comes around, I'm going to know exactly what Buck needs. I'm going to know what information I need to bring. And of course, I'm still around for the players. I'm having conversations with guys, with hitters. I'm a hitter at heart, but I also love defense. I love having conversations with Vientos and Baty, Mauricio. I feel like I'm a teacher in that way, and it kind of comes out more probably than it has to. But I'm very thankful to be under Buck. I'm very calm, like knowing he's there. He's got it. He dots the I's, crosses the T's, and he's very prepared. And that's given me a sense of I don't have to overwork. I don't have to do something that I'm not used to. And like I said, this whole thing will kind of happen organically. And I'm very thankful to be underneath Buck.
So one follow-up from me, hearing you say that, you played at an extremely high level, but it was definitely a different era of baseball where now we see it as fans, just watching the technology in the dugout. We read into all of the new technology upgrades, especially under new ownership, and the Mets are definitely one of the teams out in front of that. What are the differences of the access these guys have, whether it's sports science, nutrition, analytics, numbers, technology? Like, how much is that to balance? And we've heard that about you, is that finding that balance is so key as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And anything, balance is key, but it's tremendous. I mean, if you can't look at all, like you've mentioned everything: nutrition, diet, how you work out, how many hours you sleep, how much energy you're putting out through the day. We track everything. And the players, especially our group of guys, I haven't really been with another organization, obviously, as depth as I've been here, but these guys really love the information. At times it could be too much information. And as a coaching staff, that's our job to kind of, as a hitting coach last year was, okay, what guy needs what, how much, let's pull back on this information. But a lot of these guys are open-minded to it. And listen, your career is a short window. And we're fortunate enough to be in this game. Let's get the information. Let's use it to help us. Like, I think originally when analytics kind of came in and, baseball was changing, guys were unsure about it. But when you look at the information, you just, hey, this is going to help you at the end of the day. What you should be eating, how much energy you're spending, when Nemo's running up and down on a walk, like how are we going to keep you on the
Yeah.
field? And
Stop
so,
doing that, Nemo.
yeah,
He'll never
exactly.
stop. He'll never stop.
I mean, we love it, right? We love
Yeah.
him, but it's like, okay, hold on, we need to conserve some of that energy for center field. But it's a great time in baseball. I mean, but like you said, the key word is balance. Let's just make sure we're getting exactly what we need, but let's be smart about what we're doing it and kind of prolong our careers and have a good career at it.
I was really impressed with Jeremy Barnes, talking to him a couple of years ago when he was the director of player development, and he was the assistant hitting coach last year, and he's taking over as the full-time hitting coach now with you moving to the bench coach role. What do you think he brings to the table in the hitting coach role?
Yeah, he's I guess I can really thank him for the role that I'm in this year, to be honest with you, because teams were calling for him. He started out with the Astros, and they were pretty innovative there, and he's very educated. I think last year was a really good year for both of us. We were a pretty good combination where, analytically, and he's a wizard with the computer, but then also kind of, having me by his side, we made for a really good combination. So he's going to have a really bright future in this game. I even see him, being higher in this game as a front office, as a GM guy. Like, his mind is that good, and he's very good with organizing things and schedules, and he knows the swing. And he last year was a big year. It was my first year too, so there was a lot of new things happening for me. As long as I learned a lot from him, he learned a lot from me, and he's going to have a really bright future in this game for sure.
So you kind of hinted at this before, but I was wondering, what is it like? You have established stars, right, in your dugout, whether it's a Lindor, even Pete Alonso already at his young age. And I feel like with those guys, when they're in a rut, you have to know when to leave them alone and when to say something, compared to coaching the guys you mentioned at the top that you get your hands on for the first time in camp, that you could see a Brett Baty out there every day, a Ronny Mauricio or a Mark Vientos. What is the difference in handling the 21, 22-year-olds versus the guys that have played at the highest level and have been in all-star games?
Well, I got newsflash for everybody. I don't care how long you've played this game can get to you, and it can mentally tear you up. So it never stops. As a hitter, there's times where you go through a slump. You don't think you're ever going to get a hit again, and you're like, I can't get a hit. I stink, whatever it is. And those doubts creep in, and I think that's where somebody like myself that had been in those shoes can kind of calm them down. We're professionals, and we wear the uniform, and we think, I think people think we're like Superman all the time and nothing ever goes wrong. And that's not the case. It's a tough game. Baseball is a really tough game. It'll beat you up mentally, physically. And so, kind of having that background really helps out. But, being around these guys, like last year, Jeremy and I were behind the 8 ball. We had the lockout. And normally some of those conversations about hitting start in October, November in the previous year. And so we didn't have that luxury. And right when we got to spring training, we had to turn it on right away. It was like, we have 4 weeks. We got to get these guys ready. And there wasn't a whole lot of tweaking that we were able to do. And the hitters had to get comfortable with us too. It's, I think people think like, you do something in your craft and hitting, and it's like, oh, I could tell Francisco Lindor one thing, and it's just fixed, and we're off and running. It's a everyday kind of battle throughout the season. The swings, it comes and goes. The feelings come and go. And you're right. You have to pick the right moment. There's times emotionally, and it's funny when a guy walks into the cage, you can feel the energy. It's like right away. It's either, okay, this is going to be a good cage session. This next 20 minutes is going to be fun, or the next 20 minutes is going to be not so much fun. And it's something you just kind of read people, and they bring that energy into the cage, and you just get a sense of it for their family life and things that are going on in their personal life. And you just try to be the best you can with them. And it's part of being a coach. That's what it is. Yeah, I know hitting, and Jeremy Hefner knows pitching, but you also have to understand the person too. And that really goes a long way.
Last one we got for you, Eric. So you seem obviously to be on an upward trajectory. You go from hitting coach up to bench coach. Do you spend much time thinking about your future of managerial aspirations, or are you more of I just want to be where my feet are and I just deal with this, and then everything else will work itself out later kind of guy.
Yeah. I'm definitely in the moment. I mean, last year, my first year coming here with the Mets, it was kind of a discussion of bench coach, hitting coach. And even though I told Buck I have aspirations of managing down the road, whenever that may be, I don't really think about it too much. So that I know that's a goal for mine. But as I'm sitting here now, and I told Buck, like I felt really comfortable with kind of being in the hitting coach situation. And I told him I'd be all in for that. Like, this is it. You're going to get everything that you need from me. And, with this situation with Jeremy this year, kind of being a bench coach, it's like, yeah, like I get it. I'm maybe one step closer to kind of that next step, but I'm going to take it all in. Like, I know I have a lot to learn. And like I said, I'm very thankful to be underneath Buck, and I'm going to ask a lot of questions, and I'm going to be a sponge this year and gather as much information as I can. I mean, experience does matter. It really does. When I see the way he goes about his business, there's no way I think I could jump in and be a manager right now. Like, there's a lot I got to learn. This is going to be a big year, but I'm definitely just going to do the best I can in my role now. And that's really all that matters is 2023 and what we do this year with the Mets.
Well, we're looking forward to watching it, and we know your coaching future, Eric, is really, really bright. So it was great talking to you today, and thank you so much for the time.
All right, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, huge thanks to Eric Chavez. It was great talking to the Mets bench coach. And a reminder, you're listening to the Mets Pod. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch on SNY's YouTube or wherever you get your shows. All right, Joe, let's get into the latest around Mets spring training news and notes, and starting with one that was a bit of a scare at first. Jose Quintana has a lesion on his rib. This is per Mets GM Billy Epler. He was seen by a tumor specialist. The results of the biopsy came back benign. So a bit of a, thank goodness with Jose Quintana, but on the baseball-related side, he will undergo bone graft surgery. The Mets are not expecting him back until at least July. And that turns the conversation to, number one, first and foremost, we are very thankful and grateful. It sounds like Quintana is going to be okay. And then the second part of it is, because you have to have this conversation, all eyes have pivoted to David Peterson and Tylor Megill. And Joe, both of these guys don't want to be out of contention for having a spot in this rotation because they're both pitching just as well as one another. And for those that think, hey, do you lean Peterson because he's a lefty? Some rumblings sound like the Mets might be more intrigued by Megill. We don't know right now, and time will ultimately tell. But Joe, what is your take on the open fifth starting job for these two young ascending pitchers?
Well, first off, just thinking of Jose Quintana, because
Yes.
I mean, when we were talking about this last week, it was just like, oh, he has a stress fracture.
This wasn't even on the mind.
He'll be healthy whenever he is, and obviously this was potentially something way more than baseball. So thankfully, it seems like he's okay on that front, and we'll kind of see him when we see him on the baseball field. As far as what they do now with the fifth starter spot, I think David Peterson is just a better pitcher than Tylor Megill is, and that's not a slight on Megill. I think he has more. I think Megill has higher upside. I think he has more high octane stuff, but it's just putting it all together and be able to consistently take the ball every fifth day and pitch 90, 100 plus pitches. It feels like David Peterson has more proven his ability to do that. And Megill's a guy that obviously we've talked about this on past episodes. He's a guy that's dealt with kind of nagging type of injuries on and off. So I look at Peterson, and he pitched on Tuesday, pitched fantastic against the Nationals. I look at him as throw him in the opening day rotation. I don't really care about lefty righty thing. To me, handedness in a rotation doesn't really make much of a difference. I'm a little more interested in that in the bullpen, because then you're dealing with small sample sizes of it's the eighth inning. Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper are coming up. You need a lefty to get them out. But in the case of just the starting role, handedness doesn't matter. I just think David Peterson is better positioned to succeed from opening day on. And then you take a guy like Megill, put him in AAA Syracuse, and keep him stretched out because, like you said, Connor, we're gonna need them. So we're gonna need them all. We're gonna need these guys, and we're probably gonna need more than them. So just gotta be prepared.
Yeah, Joe, honestly, I'm hoping that this is still a conversation in a couple of weeks, either or, and not, hey, both of them better be ready because there's another spot open in the rotation. You and I are world famous at this point for saying these things tend to figure themselves out. When everybody talks about the Mets pitching depth of the rotation, coming into each spring training. This is what happens in baseball. You are going to need guys to make starts. It goes back to something I said a few weeks ago. Look at the World Championship Astros. I mean, they're a team that you think they started 5, 6, 7 guys all year? No, they need more than that. So this is how the sport goes. And I align with you. I am a big fan of David Peterson. I think somewhere along the line, he's become vastly underrated and underappreciated. We saw the strikeouts over 9 go up last year. We saw an ability to work out of jams. We saw a reliability in a sense, which was always the biggest question with him. Is he going to have a start where he implodes for 8 runs, or can he give you 6 serviceable innings? And I think we saw a more consistent approach from David Peterson last year. And once again, I'm with you. I think the upside of Megill is tantalizing at times, but that's one where I'd almost rather Megill, if necessary, build back up in Syracuse to start the year, while Peterson, out of the gate, this dude looks hungry. I'll say it. I mean, he looks hungry, ready to go. I'm sure he even feels, I know he would never say this, but internally, he should feel slighted that he wasn't coming into camp in the rotation. Former first-round pick. He's performed as of recent. He's somebody that should take this opportunity and sprint with it, not just for the first month of the season, but for the rest of his Mets tenure. This should be David Peterson saying, I am now in the rotation, I've arrived, and I'm here to stay. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with an opportunity now. And this is a pivotal one for the Mets because we know the Mets have 2 horses in the front, even though they're older guys, 2 guys that love to pitch deep into games and love to take the ball every 5th day in Scherzer and Verlander. We have the, once again, the upside, but a little bit unpredictable nature of a guy like Kodai Senga. Carrasco's a vet, but one of these young guys on the back end of the rotation will be pivotal. And it kind of pivots me to the Mets maybe getting help from some other younger players on the roster right now, Joe. We say it every week, and I'm glad we get to say it every week. Brett Baty and Ronny Mauricio still hitting the hell out of the baseball right now. And it's getting closer, Joe, to breaking time where we ask you, and I ask you, how does Brett Baty at least not make this team for opening day?
I don't have a good answer other than just, I guess, going with the veteran and whatever. But even defensively, Brett Baty looks much improved. And Eric Chavez just told us that at the top of the show, how much he's improved. And you see it on television when you're watching these games. It feels like every game, every couple games, he's making a flash play. In Tuesday's game, he ranged far to his left, spin through. Mark Vientos actually with a nice pick at first base to bail him out there on the throw a little bit. But he looks like a big league third baseman to me. I mean, I think there's going to be some consistency issues that you're going to have to work through. And, Eduardo Escobar had kind of those same consistency issues on the defensive side. So Baty's hitting, and, when you really think about it, I think it was as of yesterday, so I haven't seen updated stats. So through Monday, I believe Baty led all qualified players in batting average, on base percentage, and was like 3rd or 4th in OPS for all of baseball, which, yeah, it's spring training. Yeah, there's a bunch of players at the World Baseball Classic. But when you lead the league in anything, that just shows kind of what you're doing.
Yeah, it's a big one. Absolutely. And to kind of speak volumes to the spring Baty has had, I mean, when you look at his odds right now to win Rookie of the Year in the National League, I mean, they've skyrocketed up the board. I mean, I think he was at like plus 5,000 before spring training, and he's moved all the way down to at least maybe the best odds you can find is plus 2,000 right now. That's a drastic jump for Brett Baty. And I'm not saying odds mean anything for he'll make the team, he won't make the team, he'll perform, he won't perform. But that's the magnitude of just the spring training Brett Baty has had, that you could have gotten this guy as when a guy's plus 5,000, Joe, they're telling you he's not going to make the team out of spring training because he's not going to have the chance to put up compiled numbers. And now things have completely changed for Brett Baty. So we're excited to see what he can do if granted that opportunity. And you know what? I think just as importantly, Ronny Mauricio hitting the ball the way he has, because with Mauricio, when he hits that 450-foot home run to really kick off the spring, you go, well, we knew he could do that. It's if he can, consistently put together good at-bats, and if the power can be not 15 splash home runs, but can this guy be a 25 home run guy one day? And Joe, the power just appears that it's here to stay.
It is. I mean, he showed it in Double-A Binghamton last year. He showed it at the Dominican Winter League, and he's shown it this spring. This is just a boy that became a man right before our very eyes. You know, I remember when the Mets signed him, and I was like, this guy was a toothpick. He weighed maybe 160 pounds soaking wet, and they, pretty funny, like Baseball Reference and everything, really didn't update his weight until like last year. And
We always went over this.
I remember looking, I'm just like, you're not, that guy is not 160 pounds. And he was more like 210 last year, and he looks all of 220 to me. And the power has come along with that. He's always had raw power in his bat. He just needed to physically mature. And that's where Ronny Mauricio is. And I think now you send him to AAA Syracuse. I'm not going to even attempt to make the same case that I'm making for Brett Baty to be on the opening day roster. Mauricio definitely needs some AAA time, and we need to see how his pitch selection has grown. Don't worry about drawing walks. I'm not worried about that. We talked about this as well previously, but I want him to put himself in position where pitchers need to give him something to hit, because that's when the 450-foot home runs happen. That's when the 502-foot home run happened in Double-A last year. And if you really look kind of across the board, like not even leaving Mark Vientos out of the conversation, if you look at the StatCast data from all the games the Mets are playing that have Baty, Mauricio, and Vientos in it, those guys are littered on the top exit velocities in that game. And also, when you think of just home run distance, there's not every game is tracked across baseball because there's not StatCast data for every ballpark, minor league ballpark. But
in
among
the swamps or in the
Yeah.
little minor league parks, yeah.
Yeah. But amongst this spring, the ballparks that have tracked home runs, there's only been 4 home runs hit that were 450 feet plus. 3 of them are by Mets. 2 of them are by Ronny Mauricio. He had a 450 and a 452. And Mark Vientos actually has the longest tracked home run of this spring at 469 feet. That shot he hit the dead center last week. So you look at these young players, and the best part of it all, Francisco Alvarez is probably the best hitter of them all with the most power, and he's just not shown anything this spring yet, which is fine. Like, you could let arguably the number 1 prospect in baseball go under the radar while guys like Baty, Mauricio, and Vientos make their case. And it's just an exciting time that these hitters are going to add something that this offense really lacks.
Right. I think anybody would sign up for this if, we knew Alvarez needs some seasoning. We knew the Mets, honestly, weren't really interested in giving him a chance to make the team. They went out and paid Narvaez. They like Nito for what he is. Alvarez is a guy that will impact the future. Mauricio was somebody that started to fall out of favor of being a highlighted prospect, and now he's all the way back in. Brett Baty is the guy. When you look at the Carlos Correa signing falling through, Brett Baty is the guy that had the chance, and I don't count Kodai Senga. I get he's a rookie. You could bet on it, but I'm not counting Senga. Brett Baty's the one that had the most unpredictable nature, but also the biggest chance to upgrade the team, because this team needs offense, consistent offense out of that third base spot. And speaking of that, something that's caught my eye, Francisco Lindor is scorching for Team Puerto Rico right now. And if you know anything about the World Baseball Classic and Francisco Lindor, he played in 2017, played well, and carried that over into a hot start in the major leagues. And Joe, I'm feeling optimistic about that. Lindor's energy and passion and ability to produce at a high level in the WBC for Puerto Rico is something that I think gives him a different kind of momentum compared to a typical spring training where if you're a veteran, you're an established star, it's got to be hard to get up for those spring training games. And then the season starts. You just blink. The World Baseball Classic is nationally televised. The fan environment is better than anything the major leagues has. It called me crazy. It looks better than some playoff games. And Lindor just feels to be going full throttle. We saw the bases clearing triple, loaded bases clearing triple, almost a grand slam. So, Joe, I think Lindor's hot WBC, I think, will carry over to give a hot start for the Mets.
I think it's definitely a big factor. He's now going to be game ready come opening day. And when you go through spring training, like, look, I mean, we even looked today, like opening days a couple weeks from now, and a bunch of players still were pulled after the 5th inning. So Lindor's going to be ready to go. And I'll tell you, one thing that I noticed, and I don't know if it's just me, but seeing him in another uniform just gave me like a greater appreciation for the fact that that he wears a Mets uniform. It's just like, man, this guy's the captain of Team Puerto Rico. He's bringing all this energy, all this juice, and performing in a big way. And it's just like, cool, he's ours. This is really sweet. But I do think, to your point, Connor, that the WBC ramp up for Lindor is going to help him in the early going. The question now, which we won't be able to tell until later in the year, does that ramp up impact? Maybe there's a drought in the summer for him. Is there something in July where maybe he hits a bit of a wall and then the All-Star break kind of separates that and then he comes back hopefully good after that? But yeah, I think it's an amazing thing. And I'm enjoying the WBC. I don't know about you.
Great.
And it's something that previously I don't think I ever really gave it a fair shake. And this year I'm watching it a lot more and I'm enjoying the heck out of it.
I love it. I have it on every night. Whether it's in the background while I'm working or whatever it is, it's very enjoyable. The fan environments are unbelievable. You see veterans that aren't even in the league anymore that are trying to break back in, guys that are these long shot stories. I could watch any team play in the WBC. I think the event has really, really taken it up a notch, and it's been awesome to watch.
Did you see that picture from Nicaragua that struck
Yes.
out Juan Soto and
He got signed.
what was it? Devers? He got signed before he left the ballpark. The scout found him before he left and signed him. So
That's amazing.
Really, yeah, like now there's going to be cool stories like that. So if he ends up a major leaguer one day, there'll be a nice movie or something made on his story.
All right, so let's get into the mailbag questions. We got two really good ones today. This one is in a similar light, but not with the WBC, Joe. This is from JJ. He asked, most impressive thing from spring training that you believe will carry over into the regular season. He said, for me, it's Baty. And we touched on Baty. We covered Baty a lot. And if Baty carries that over into the pro level right away, that would be amazing. For me, Joe, it's the depth of the bullpen right now, which is a pleasant surprise. As somebody who got on this podcast and wants the team to sign Andrew Chafin every single offseason, I really liked what they did at the top of the bullpen. You always have hope that one of these arms, whether it's Curtis, whoever it may be, that can figure it out, right? But I think it's actually put the Mets in a spot that they have to make a few tough decisions, and that is a good problem to have for this team.
That is absolutely what I was going to go with as well. Obviously,
I'll let you expand on the different players then. I didn't want to take the whole spotlight.
Thoughts to our guy Bryce Montes de Oca, who has a stress reaction in his elbow, so he's going to be out.
Good news. Not that's not the worst case news.
Yeah, it could have been much worse, and he's had his share of injuries. So hopefully it's just a few weeks, and then we get that fireballer back on the mound and up in Queens in no time. The Rule 5 pick, Zach Green, who we had talked about over the last month or so, he was waived, and he is now on his way back to the Yankees. So he did not make the team, and he's out of the organization, opening up a 40-man spot for maybe a Tommy Hunter, who kind of never seems to go away. And he comes in, and I love what Tommy Hunter does. He's a guy that will go a couple innings if you need him to. He throws one speed, he throws two pitches, one goes right, one goes left, and that's what Tommy Hunter brings to the table. So I think he has the opportunity to compete for a job, especially with that open 40-man spot. But I've been most impressed. John Curtis looks just like he did pre-Tommy John, up to 96, 97 miles an hour. The slider is really crisp. He's been fantastic this spring. And Sam Coonrod, a guy who the Mets claimed off waivers from the Phillies, who kind of was a wild thing of sorts over the last couple of years, where the velocity's there, the control wasn't. So far this spring, Sam Coonrod is throwing strikes. He's up to 99 miles an hour. He has that mid to upper 80s slider that's getting swings and misses. At this point, I think it's going to be really hard pressed for them to keep Curtis or Coonrod out of this bullpen. And if that's the case, you're talking about pumping, upper 90s, mid to upper 90s, those kind of guys as, I guess, the lower end of your bullpen. That puts the Mets, in my opinion, in a fantastic spot to begin the year from a bullpen's perspective.
Absolutely, because these aren't guys that are thrown into high leverage situations out of the gate, and maybe they can earn that. Maybe injuries, they need that. But for the Mets to have depth in the bullpen that is cost effective, that once again, more importantly, runs deep, that guys get tired. It happens. We've seen, unfortunately, a guy like Tommy Hunter deal with different injuries. He's a bigger guy. He's an older guy. He's dealt with injuries. It was like when he got his first hit in the major leagues, and then we didn't see him for like 3 years. But yeah, so these things happen, man. They happen, and it's good that the Mets and that's when we talk on this show about the things that you don't get to see in the news, whether it's the technology, whether it's the analytics department. These are the outcomes from upgrading those, finding the players that don't get the headlines, don't get the $50 million contracts or anything like that, but can really matter to a baseball team. So it's good to see that side from the Mets. Joe, I know you've really been harping
Yeah.
on that for a couple of years.
Yeah, and the one thing I do want to note from I guess a less positive standpoint is we have to keep an eye on what's up with Brooks Raley. He obviously left the World Baseball Classic due to a hamstring strain, and Billy Epler said today he's kind of week to week. So we have to
Those
keep an
can
eye on
linger.
that. Yeah, we don't want to have no lefty. So could that open 40-man spot, if this hamstring does linger, do they make that call to Zach Britton if Raley is going to start the season on the IL? I like to think that they want to stay internal with the bullpen, but there's not a lefty to put in there. I mean, no offense to Zach Muckenhirn. He's not a guy that I think is ready to crack the opening day roster. So I'd keep an eye on what's up with Brooks Raley and see kind of what that means for the lefty in the bullpen. But overall, to your point, the combination of the data, the analytics, and just the Jeremy Hefner's existence, I think, is something that is paying dividends for this organization in a big way.
Yeah, and you have to wonder. We've seen some struggles, I think, from a guy in Joey Lucchesi as well. So that's not really the role, right? That's not filling the Raley role. That's more of, hey, can you make a spot start here or there? So it's something to monitor with this team. And with that, we will close out the show with our last mailbag question. This user's name is Justin Verlander Injury Updates. You never know what you're going to get on Mets Twitter. Hopefully we don't have any of those.
No update.
This user asked, how many homers are expected from a whole season of Brett Baty? So let's play the game, Joe, and say that Baty makes the team. Fingers crossed, relatively healthy. We'll say, how about 135 games? Is that fair? He's going to sit plenty. We have Escobar on the team. He's a rookie. That could even be like a very, very short IL stint. We'll say 135 games. How many home runs you got for us, Joe?
I don't know why it wouldn't be 20 plus. Like
I was going to say 21.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe 20 to 23, 24, which is kind of in line with what Escobar gave the Mets last year. But a lot of Escobar's home runs came in
Very
like
streaky.
a month and a half span. So if you have a guy like Baty, what I think would be big, that what he would bring to the table, yes, the power would be there enough. Like they'd get 20, maybe 25 on a high end. But if we called it, like you said, 20, 21, you're going to get a bunch of doubles along with that. You're going to get a guy who gets on base with that, which Eduardo Escobar is not something that is, one of his greatest skills. He's not, a guy who can't get on base, but Brett Baty has 360, 370 on base percentage potential just because of he's so advanced at pitch recognition. This is something even going back to when he was in Brooklyn. I remember talking to people, and he was on the same team as Francisco Alvarez, and talking to people with the organization at that time. They were like, Brett Baty, his recognition on breaking balls and just seeing the ball out of the pitcher's hand is night and day more than Alvarez at the same stage. So I think Baty provides really the whole package offensively, and the home runs will be nice. I know everyone's focused on that. We've spent certainly a lot of time over the last couple of months saying we need to add more thump into this lineup, but I think Brett Baty brings kind of that total package to the table offensively, and I'm really excited for him to get that opportunity. And I will fight on Twitter and on this podcast for him to get it on opening day. And if he doesn't, I will come on and talk about it every time he hits a home run in Syracuse.
I think every user on Mets Twitter would have your back on that one, Joe. I think we're nearing the point that they might not have a choice. He's just simply been too good. And
it's Pete Alonso, right? Like
I was just going to say, to be fair to the Mets as an organization, we've seen a player perform and absolutely earn that spot. If they weren't, playing the whole, hey, we don't want to start to get into contractual situations where you burn a year. The Mets are not going to operate that way at all. And so I'm on the optimistic side that Baty, forget making the team, He could very well be the opening day third baseman, and then we start to see Escobar in this super utility, DH heavy kind of role, and he'll play third base a ton as well. But barring something crazy happening, Joe, I think we will be talking about Baty making this club out of the gate.
I hope so. And like you said, Escobar, you can play second base too. Like if there's a day you want to throw McNeil in the outfield for a particular reason, Escobar can play second base. He has a lot of work there in his past. So yeah, I hope we're trending in that direction. I think it would be a good sign for the Mets organization going forward that players, when they show up to spring training, they don't just say, there's a veteran in front of me. Let me just get my work in and I'll get my shot when I do. If you show up and you put in the work and you produce, you're going to get the opportunity. So I think this is a prime opportunity for the Mets to showcase that as kind of their mentality going forward.
Yeah, and good note on the outfield. I think people need to be reminded this is not a young outfield for the Mets, whether it's Marte, who's going to need time off, Canna's going to need a lot of time off, Nimmo is a guy that needs time off. And yeah, I get they got Tommy Pham, but that's not enough. You could see starts for McNeil out in the outfield. Guillorme has to play every now and then as well. Escobar has to play, and we know they've even thought about Escobar in the corners. So really good call out. And the best part is you have the perfect manager to manage all that. Buck Showalter put on a master class at really playing those cards right last year, and he'll do it again with our guest as well in Eric Chavez, who he will lean on that. So Joe, really fun show today. Great having Eric Chavez on. When we get to talk to the coaches, it just shows you how bright of a staff the Mets have under Buck Showalter. It's always very impressive. We've had Hefner on before. Now we have Chavez on. But closing thoughts on today's episode.
We're getting this close. We're this close to opening day. I mean, we're basically 2 weeks away at this point. So just really excited to get going, get through the rest of the WBC, get those players back, and let's ship down to Miami and get ready to get started on a big 2023 with Brett Baty batting seventh and playing third base. I don't care where he's batting. Just throw the man in the lineup on opening day, Buck.
And with that, one last reminder to subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch on SNY's YouTube or wherever you get your shows. Thanks so much, everybody. Catch you next week.